Too busy singing, Jordan. I didn't realize it was my turn. I will tell it today. That's kind of the point, I think. All right, good morning again, church. Just kind of in this little section of time I had between, I guess you could call it series, I chose to do 3 sermons on this 126 by 126 idea, 63 souls, how we can reach 63 people in the next year and a half. And so today I've got one last sermon that's kind of focused on that idea, but really this is just the idea of evangelism, right? Nothing new really, but don't we need a little spurring on? Well, it sure seems like it because there's thousands of people out there and only not quite 100 in here, right? So the goal of evangelism, the 63 Souls Initiative, is to bring people into not this church, but the church, into Jesus, share the gospel message. And I sometimes fear that my message can be misconstrued in that way. It's not about this church, right? In fact, sometimes I think we live a little too much for the buildings and the places, and it's about the church, capital C church, about bringing people as God would rejoice with the angels when one more soul is saved. So that's why I wanted to put us on this mission for the next year and a half, or maybe less, maybe longer, who knows. But I think we should just focus on evangelism. Let me start off today. I just want to brag a little bit about, man, don't we live in an awesome place? You know, I'm not really one to brag too much on America. You know, I think that you can get a little too worshipy of America sometimes, right? But just being real with you for a second, the United States, America, it's kind of an amazing place. You know, everyone in the United States lives in the world's point of view in riches. And we have freedom to think what we want and say what we want, even though we're very boisterous about it. In other places, we would die for it. We don't here. We're free to gather with various religious beliefs of any kind, and I know that's great until they're not your religious beliefs, right? But that's a freedom we have. Man, it's a great country to live in, and then I think you guys will definitely agree with me on this. Even better than America is Wyoming, right? It's like America, but better. That's how Texans talk about Texas, too. It's like America, but well, better, of course. No, Wyoming's awesome, right? And I'm a little partial to the western states. I know I am, right? And that's just because I look around and I just see God all around in the western states. I see his mountains and his lakes and his great big skies and moose and bear, and I'm just like, wow, God made all of this. And sometimes I'm really easily reminded, Courtney kind of did this to me this week, I really do love the West and Wyoming, because we were talking about how this next weekend we're going to be going down to Texas, and I can handle Texas. I lived there for a couple of years. I could do it, right? And Courtney said, yeah, but you've done a really good job of avoiding the summer of Texas. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, Harold, it's still August when we leave. And I said, wait, what do you mean? She said, it's South Central Texas, Harold. It's 106 today with the humidity. And I said, oh no. So please pray for me this next weekend, because I love Wyoming and not the weather of Texas or other places. But we live in great places, don't we? I live in a great place, but really, let me tell you, I don't actually live here. I don't live in Wyoming. I don't live in America. I don't live on this globe. Because as a Christian, I don't live on this world. In fact, I think as Christians, we would sing something like, this world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. We don't live here, do we? We might be passing through, and America might be a great place to live, and Wyoming even better. But the fact and the matter of it is, as Christians, we don't actually claim our nationality here, do we? This is not where we live. In fact, 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 through 11, I think it's here someplace. Oh man, that's really hard to read. Oh, it's not so bad for you guys. Great. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 through 11 really reminds us of this as Christians. And think about it, Peter's writing to Christians here, right? Dispersed wherever they may be, but reminding Christians who we are. 1 Peter 2, verses 9 through 11. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Peter is reminding Christians then, and I'd say all the way now, today, that no matter those various countries that they live in, no matter the various lands that we live in, or states or provinces or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter where our nationality is, because our nationality, we are citizens of the light. We were pulled out of the darkness into the marvelous light. What a good descriptive word right there, right? The marvelous light. We are citizens. We are God's people, not America's people. We can be America's people, but God's people, America's people, Wyoming people, God's people first. We are nations and people and citizens of the light if we are Christians. And if we are Christians and citizens of the light and God's people, we no longer call ourselves America's people or Galatian people or whatever that may be, but as Peter would say, we are immigrants. We're not natives. We are sojourners and exiles. Those are words we don't use very often anymore, right? We much rather use in our political context illegal alien or something. But sojourners and exiles, what's the picture that's being painted there? Sojourners and exiles. Well, what a sojourner and what an exile is someone who is temporarily living in a foreign land. As Christians, we are temporarily living in a foreign land. Why? Because we are citizens of the light. And yet we are temporarily living in America, in Wyoming, in Riverton, or wherever it may be. We're just sojourning through, or just a passing through, as the old hymn would say. So if we live here, but yet we are citizens of the light, we are God's people, how do we apply that to these 63 souls that we are going to reach this year? How is that going to change things, or how might that motivate us to look at the world around us? What do we call the world around us, by the way, you guys? We call it our culture. Culture is kind of an all-encompassing word. Usually we use it to describe the ideologies of a people. But really it's more than that. It's the people, the places they are, the ideologies, the beliefs, all of that is culture. So really, we're just passing through the culture as well. I mean, John 14 and 15 talks about how we are in this world, but not of this world, right? So we are a part of the culture, but not a part of the culture. Again, foreigners and exiles living in a different land as citizens of the light. But yet, we must be involved in our culture. If we aren't involved in our culture, how are we going to bring 63 souls to Christ this year? How are we ever going to evangelize? See, being a part of the culture is really, really important. Again, in the world, but not of the world. It's a fine line to play, isn't it? So how do we do that? How are we with the people that we don't actually belong with, but yet we grew up with, if you know what I mean? Well, I think we kind of have a really interesting example of how to be culturally relevant when we are sojourners. This is one of my favorite, accounts of Paul's missionary journey. Missionary journeys, this is one of them, right? And it's in Acts chapter 17, and this is where we're going to hang out for the rest of the day. So if you got your Bible, which I sure hope you do, go ahead and flip open to the book of Acts, and let's hop on over to chapter 17. But what's been happening in Acts just a little bit before where we're going to be picking up here in verse 16 here in a minute, Paul, Silas, and Timothy, they've been traveling and they've been sharing the gospel, right? Evangelizing. Missionary work is what we call it these days, but they were just doing God's work. God's work. And so right before we get to 17:16, they're split up a little bit. And so Paul actually goes ahead of them, Silas and Timothy, to this place called Athens. Anybody know where Athens is at? Athens, Greece. Like, we understand where Athens is at. That's kind of a cool place to be, Paul. I'd like a trip to Athens sometime. I think that might be cool. But Paul is there alone, and he sends back word to Timothy and Silas, and he says, I will wait for you here. Come here and meet me. We're going to meet up back in Athens. And so while Paul is in Athens, he does a little sightseeing, right? He looks around the city. He sees what there is to see, and that's where we pick up with what his mission is in Athens, in Acts chapter 17, verses 16 through 34. So I want to read this whole chunk because I don't want to leave out any piece of the picture of Paul's mission in Athens. And in fact, this is the whole description of Paul's mission in Athens. This is it right here, right? We get a lot about Corinth. We get a lot about Galatia, but here, this is it about Athens, Greece, right here. Acts 17, verses 16 through 34. Follow along with me if you will. Now, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, Silas and Timothy, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and the Stoic philosophers also conversed with him. And some said, what does this babbler even say? Others says, he seems to be preaching or a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean. Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything. Since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling places, that they should seek God, and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet, he is actually not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead." Now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, "We will hear you again about this." So Paul went out from their midst. But some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Dionysius the Areopagite and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. Again, I wanted to give you the whole picture of Paul's story, his journey in Athens. This is all we see. We don't know what happened when Timothy and Silas got there. We don't know. I mean, he was invited back again. We don't know that. We don't know how it all went. But what we do know and what we do see is how Paul interacted in a culture that he was not from. He was sojourning. He was passing through. He was in exile. He did not belong there. And what we see is a powerful example of how you cannot be a citizen someplace because your citizenship is more important than God, and you can still be in the culture and still talk to the people, even though they're different than you. See, when Paul's in Athens, I love the Mind movie that's in my head, right? I just see Paul walking around and looking, and he's looking at all of these idols. It's a beautiful city, lots of sculptures, lots of gold. And he sees, oh, that's this idol and that's that idol. And he comes across one, and he's like, this is the idol to keep them safe from the ones they forgot, to the unknown God. And so he walks around and he sees that. So he does a little bit of sightseeing, but that's not what he's there for, because we see that we see his heart about what he thinks and what he sees, and then the very next thing we see him doing is he's out there with the people. He's out there with the people telling them about God and Jesus. He's out there in the synagogues with the Jews, right? That's the right place to be. But he's not only in the synagogues with the Jews who know about God and trying to convince them about Jesus. He's not just there. He's also where? He's at Walmart. He's in the marketplace. He is where the people are, not just the religious people, but all the people. And because he's out where all the people are, it becomes known that he is babbling about something crazy, right? That's another piece that I want to point out is he gets there, he observes the culture, he talks about Jesus everywhere he can and should, and there's haters. There's haters. Some people say, what is this guy saying? He's babbling. So Paul, what's he do? He goes back to the Airbnb, packs his bags, and leaves? No. He just says, whatever, haters. And he keeps on sharing the message of God and Jesus. So much so, in fact, that they invite him. They invite him where? Not just in the marketplace, not just in the synagogue, but to their institution of higher learning. I don't know which versions say this, but some versions say up on Mars Hill. But really, the picture that we're being painted here about where he's invited to come speak is where the higher learning is taking place, where the philosophers work, and where people study deep knowledge. Because remember, the people of Athens, it says, all they did was learn new things. They were like Americans, but without YouTube. So they went up to the Areopagus to learn. And that's where Paul's invited. It's like the university. He's invited to come give the university lecture and share about this God. And he does. He takes what he observed in the culture. He takes that idol that he saw about the unknown God. He gets up in the place of higher learning in front of all of the people, and he says, guys, I saw this. I saw this idol. It said to an unknown God. And what he says from there is basically, I know that God. He is the God. He describes how the unknown God that you were just trying to safely throw in is actually the God that made everything, everyone, and dictates the whole world. And you can know him, and I know him. And he is calling everyone to repentance through he doesn't say Jesus, does he? But he describes Jesus perfectly. Through the one who is going to judge on the last day, who has been proven by his resurrection from the dead. And they're all like, whoa, that's creepy. What he's talking about is the one true God and the one true Jesus who died for everyone. And he did that all from his little tourist journey around the city of Athens. Well, it wasn't just the tourist journey, it was also the fact that he continued to speak boldly about the gospel. And he didn't let the haters stop him, and he didn't let the Jews stop him, but rather he kept speaking. And most importantly, he used what was in the culture in front of him to share about Jesus. That's really what I want us to focus on today. He used what was in the culture in front of him to share about Jesus Christ. He used it as an opportunity. And sometimes I wonder if we look at Paul's example of the opportunity he took and we said, he was Paul, that was special. Or we say, I'm not bold enough to do that. And the reason I wonder if we say that as Christians is because sometimes we get scared of our culture. And instead of using the opportunity of what culture is, we say, that culture, it's messed up. Here's my Jesus. Instead of, this culture, it's got a big old Jesus hole in it. That's what Paul did, right? He used something so prevalent and obvious in the culture to share about Jesus. So we should not be afraid of our culture. We should not be afraid of the places we live and the world around us, even though it's wild. Don't get me wrong. It's wild. It always will be and always has been. Culture is wild, people are crazy, and everything's going to continue to be that way. Paul used that opportunity. Paul used what we might consider in America, a very anti-God monument. He used the anti-God monument to talk about the one true God. Do we have the boldness? Do we have the strength to do that? Or do we sometimes just throw culture to the side and hope people will come over and listen to us outside of culture about our Jesus? So what I want to do today for just the rest of my sermon, I want to think about Acts 17. We read it, we talked about it, and I want to apply it a little bit to us today. I think we need to be in our culture and we need to find the things that people are desiring or maybe don't even know they desire, the unknown God, and use the things from culture to tell them about Jesus. And so I want to get nerdy for just the last little bit because that's a big statement, isn't it? What are the things in our culture that people want or don't want or desire that we can actually use about Jesus? You know, what is it? Is it McDonald's? People desire McDonald's in America. You might laugh, but one time I was at a youth event and we were given free rein to go do a service project and like $100. That was a lot for teenagers, right? And what my group did is we just went and stood at the drive-thru at McDonald's and said, "Can I buy your lunch today? Jesus loves you." Could it be McDonald's? I don't know. I wish we didn't have to just guess. Well, we don't actually have to guess that much because, there's these really smart people who do surveys and things, and they break down America for us every year. And we can learn what people think like and what people do in America. But let me show a couple of statistics for you. First off, I want to tell you, now the clicker doesn't work for me, Jordan, so you should be happy about that. This study that I'm going to refer to for the rest of the day is called the American Beliefs Study. It's about what people believe in America. 15,000 people were studied, okay? 14,900 and some, right? A small slice of America, but very diverse to try and get this. It's over 200 pages long. You can read it all right there, rivertonchurchofchrist.org/study. I'm not going to do all of it today. I just want to point out a couple of things. So if you want to check it out, it's all free and available for you there, the American Belief Study. But the first thing I want to point out is that if Paul walked into Athens and he perceived that they were very religious, we can walk into Wyoming and perceive that we are not. This right here is some bar graphs about the regions of America, and this survey puts people into 3 categories. The religious, I can't remember what the middle one's called, it'll show up here in a minute. Basically, the middle one is, yeah, you go to church if grandma asks you to on Easter, right? And then the last one is the nones. We do not believe in God. We have no faith, right? The West, where we live, has the highest percentage of nones in all of America. 34% of all people that live in the West say that they have no faith in any God. And then the orange part there, 15%, those are practicing Christians. So there's a big gap in the middle, too, of those people that are kind of, I'll go to church if somebody tells me I have to. But 34%, I mean, look at that compared to the South. The South is all flip-flopped on us, right? So if you think that we live in a culture that doesn't need Jesus, I hope this proves us wrong. We are walking like Paul is walking into Athens, seeing that they do not know the true God. We can look outside and see that most of the people we interact with do not know the true God. Man, let's change that, right? How are we going to change it? What are some of the things about culture that people want to see different about religion? Because that's what we are, right? We're talking about Jesus. That's a religion. That's what Paul was walking in with. To the unknown God, a religion. Well, here's what non-attending nominal Christians, those are the ones that will go on Easter if their arm's twisted, right? This is what they dislike about religion. Religious people are too judgmental. 26% say that is true. Religion is too focused on money. They don't trust religious leaders. They don't have enough time to be religious. They don't trust organized religion. There's too strict beliefs. They moved. They're disillusioned. They couldn't find the right church to go to. Man, what a good excuse for us Americans, right? I couldn't find the right church. They sang 3 verses of that song instead of 2. They're too old-fashioned. I've heard that one before. And then another one that kind of is the first one again. They did not feel welcome. These are the top reasons that Christians that aren't really Christians, they don't go to church but probably were raised in it, that's the reasons they don't go to church. So if we're analyzing culture and we're going to use what culture's given us, I think we should maybe focus on not doing the things that make people not want to go to church. So maybe we should not be too judgmental. It's a big one, right? Maybe we should not be too focused on money. Yeah, I think so. You know, if the first thing somebody walks into church and you hand them, their tithe envelope instead of a greeting, that's not going to work for us, right? You evangelize to somebody out there and say, hey, man, you want to come to church? We're hurting on the contribution. You want to come to church? No. We need to be leaders in our churches that are trustworthy, not liars, not deceiving. We need to work against all of these things. And I might speak right here because I already hear the naysayers. Harold, we have to hold fast to the Bible. None of these things go against the Bible. And I think sometimes we hold fast to these things thinking they're the Bible, and that'll be evidently more true in the next couple of slides I show you. We can hold fast to the Bible and still be in our culture, and still not be too judgmental, and still, maybe be a little more flexible on our beliefs, and still maybe not be so old-fashioned, and definitely welcome people. So that's why I gave you the study. You can look at all the things we're doing wrong. But what about the things we might do right? In our culture, what do they want to see if they go to church? What do they want to see? They want to see warm and friendly encounters. That makes sense. That's the exact opposite of being too judgmental, right? They want somebody to be friendly to them when they come in or maybe when they're welcomed. Oh, thank goodness they want quality sermons. That's interesting though, isn't it? This is the nominal people, the people that have maybe been to church before. They don't want to come and not understand what is being said. They want to come and hear. They actually don't mind traditional worship experiences. They think that's pretty great to sing praises to our God. They want to develop personal relationships. wow, actually be friends with people at church? That's wild. That's what people want. That's actually what people want. And you know, I'm reading these things, and I can think of the people that we have touched over the past years, and I think these things are true. People really wanted a personal relationship. They really wanted to hear quality sermons. They wanted friends and warm encounters. This one's interesting to me. It shows up a couple of times. Holiday programs and activities. They actually want those. They want opportunities to volunteer. They actually want to be put to work. They want family activities and grown-up activities. Activities? Well, that's scary. No, it's not. That's what friends and family do. We do activities together. And so again, that's something we should focus on as a church. They want social involvement in the world around us. And then this last one was a little bit interesting. They like celebrating the sacraments. Lord's Supper. They want to know what that's about. Well, that's pretty cool. So this is about people that sometimes go to church. But what about the people that are nuns? Never want to go to church. And this one's kind of hard to read because there's the practicing Christians up there too. I don't know why they grouped the two together. But still number one is they want warm and friendly encounters. Warm and friendly encounters. In fact, let me just tell you the overlap between the nominal Christians and the people that are nothing at all. This is what they want to see from their cultural perspective. They want warm and friendly encounters. They want social cause involvement, meaning we care about the communities we're in. They want holiday programs and activities. They want opportunities to volunteer. They want family activities, and they want adult social activities. They want to be a part of a family, you guys. They want to be a part of a family who loves each other and who cares about the community we're in and who does stuff together. No matter if they believe in God or not, that's what they desire. That's our culture. That's the culture we live in. I think we could work with that. I think we could work with that. I think 63 people or more want to know that we love them and they're a part of our family and they can come here and do things with us because we have things to do. And they can come here and be useful because we want to use them as part of the family. And they want to know that we care less about our building and our name and more about the people and communities around us. Man, that almost sounds like the New Testament church in Acts chapter 2, doesn't it? The culture around us isn't actually that scary. And that's exactly what I think Paul thought after he did his little look around Athens. All of these idols, all of these false gods, it's easy to look at that and say, man, that is terrifying. Paul did not at all. He looked around and he said, the unknown God, I know him. We can look around and say, a place for friends and activities and jobs to do? Oh man, I know the place. I know the place where you can fit in, you can serve, you can be involved, loved, and we care about the community. It's called the church. And the way you can be a part of the church is, let me tell you about my Jesus. Let me tell you about what God has done for me and about what Jesus can do for you. So, here's the hard thing. If we are going to embrace our culture and even the overlaps that I just talked about friendliness, volunteer opportunities, activities for kids and families and adults, social care, it's going to be, hopefully it's a little bit of a kick in the pants. Here's the reason why. Because if we're going to focus on reaching people in this way that culture is telling us they desire, that means we will have to do some uncomfortable things. That means we will have to care about reaching those people with social activities more than we will have to care about the way potluck has been forever. Because it's going to change. Because of course it's going to change, right? And we're going to have to be more comfortable with the fact that if we're doing family activities, there's going to be families here with noisy kids. Of course there's going to be. And we're going to have to be more comfortable with the fact that we're going to care about our community, and that community might have some rough spots. And they may come to church because that's our whole goal. That's going to be uncomfortable because they're going to be weirder than us, and we're pretty weird. And so things are going to get real uncomfortable and sweaty, and somebody's going to sit in your seat, and we're going to have to do potluck different, and we might do activities that look different, and my goodness, we might sing a new song. But it would be worth it, wouldn't it? Because we are standing in our culture, looking at what they're telling us they desire, and the Bible totally fits what they desire. We don't have to change it. Don't be afraid about that. We just got to change us because we are sojourning through a culture until we get to heaven someday. So you ready to do it? That's what we're doing with these things and 63 souls. I think we need to focus on those warm and friendly encounters. And I know we're pretty good at that, but sometimes we're also really terrible at that. I'll throw it back at you, right? We're really good at that, but also absolutely terrible. I've had people come crying to me after visiting church because people were not friendly. Social cause, we need to be in our communities. Programs and activities, even at the holidays, that means Christmas. Christmas is scary. Opportunities to volunteer. We got to let people come in here and help us serve God. Family activities and adult activities, we're going to have to do some activities. Uncomfortable things, but it would be worth it if we could reach one more soul for the joy of God in heaven, where he sings and rejoices with the angels. And it doesn't matter that it's the Riverton Church of Christ. It matters that it's into the church for the glory of God because of his Son. Because that's what he did for us. Jesus for us. God made them because he cared about us. And my microphone's dying, so the sermon should be over. But I want to remind us that this has already been done for us. How can we do it for anyone that doesn't know Jesus? Let's stand and sing this last song. And for the next year and a half, let's get uncomfortable while we reach some souls.